The final 5 sections of Part 5 of Beyond Good and Evil are important and should be read carefully. Before we begin, I'd like to say a word or two about Nietzsche's Lamarckism. Lamarckism is a pre-Darwinian, pre-Mendelian belief that changes that an individual acquires through purposive behavior can somehow be passed on to future generations. The difficulty with Lamarckism is that it is undeniably false. It is simply not a viable biological theory any longer. So a question to think about as we read what Nietzsche is saying in these sections is whether any of his claims or insights can be separated from his Lamarckian assumptions. Can we reinterpret some of his claims in a psychological or sociological framework, for example? Now, on to Nietzsche's text. In section 199, he says that human societies have always consisted of herds, with many who obey and relatively few who command, and that over time this need for obedience is now innate in many human beings. And this produces what he calls a formal conscience, a kind of structural conscience, which simply says thou shalt or thou shalt not, with a blank at the end, thou shalt blank, thou shalt do something. These are always phrased in terms of unconditional and impersonal commands, but they require content. The content, says Nietzsche, is always provided by something like instinct or public opinion, class prejudice, or generally any loud voice that can impress a certain content upon the formal conscience of the herd individual. Human history and its progress and lack of progress, he says, can be explained by the fact that the herd instinct is more readily inherited than the command instinct. And so the logical end of all this process is that the commanders gradually die out, or they suffer from guilty conscience. They end up having to deceive themselves in order to command. They have to pretend that they obey even while they are commanding. This is the situation that actually exists in Europe today, says Nietzsche, today for him being 1886. He calls this the moral hypocrisy of the commanders. They need to deceive themselves in order to command. They need to pretend that they also are obeyers, obeying some kind of higher command, either commands of objective morality or of divine will. And I think it's important to note that Nietzsche's claim here is that these commanders are doing this in order to salve their own guilty conscience. That is, this is psychological and not cynical. They are not pretending to obey in order to manipulate people. They are pretending to obey because they are psychologically incapable of commanding unambiguously and in a sort of unconcealed way. This is the lie they have to tell to themselves in order to live out their life as commanders. The herd man today claims to be the only acceptable type of man, says Nietzsche, and therefore he glorifies his own traits as universally good. What makes a good herd man is what is good for all human beings. And yet, he says, the appearance of a genuine, unconditional commander, a man like Napoleon, fills them with relief because it promises to relieve the intolerable pressure that is building up within them. This is part of Nietzsche's psychological analysis of the herd man. Because of the mixed heritage of modern man, individuals contain many conflicting drives and values. There's a tremendous tumult and opposition within each individual. And this produces, generally, weaker human types, which, above all, desire to end this inner conflict, to end the war that they are, that's sort of written into their very psychology. And this type of man then tends to think of happiness as a kind of tranquility, a tranquilization, a coming to rest and arriving at an end to the inner strife and tumult of their own being. But he says in late ages there also appear these very rare exceptional types, men possessed of self-mastery and self-outwitting. These are these enigmatic men of destiny. He names Alcibiades, Julius Caesar, and Leonardo da Vinci as 3 possible types, and notes that these darers of great things also originate from the same inner war that produces the weak and herd type of man. These always appear simultaneously. We might think here of whether he is speaking of something like the overman that he described in Zarathustra. Nietzsche makes 2 major points in section 201. First, that in the life of the herd, love of neighbor is always secondary to and consequent upon fear of neighbor. This is because the safety of the community requires labeling anything strong and dangerous in the human person as immoral. And second, strong exceptional individuals threaten the herd. These can be men of high spirituality, of strong will, even of strong reason. These are seen as dangerous and labeled evil by the herd, which instead praises itself and praises the harmless mediocrity of people who don't threaten the common good. But without opportunities of strong spirits to educate themselves in severity, the noble spirit can decline and die out. And so we might see a soft society beginning to side with the criminals who would destroy it. And they do this in all sincerity, says Nietzsche. They have come to see inflicting punishment in itself as being terrifying and burdensome. They would much rather not do it. They would satisfy themselves with merely making criminals harmless, that is, harmless to the herd, to the common good. And this, he says again, is the situation of Europe today. This herd timidity that wants nothing more than to abolish danger. But to abolish danger is also to abolish herd morality, the morality of minimizing and avoiding danger. And this is what the herd calls progress. We might think here for a moment about the future that Nietzsche is describing. If herd morality is the only possible morality, and it aims towards abolishing danger, but that also means abolishing itself, this means that this herd morality is moving mankind toward a situation in which there will be no more morality at all. Human beings will be completely safe from all danger, and therefore there'll be no need for any moral categories or any moral judgments at all. This is a danger that Nietzsche is warning against, and something that he wishes to avoid. Now, some may object to the herd label, Nietzsche says, to this animalization of human beings in his description, but he says this is correct. All of Europe today, in 1886, thinks with one mind in its moral judgments. They all think in terms of good and evil. And this amounts to the self-glorification of the herd instinct and the confirmation of its dominance over all other human instincts and all other human possibilities. Nietzsche's key point in this section is that there exist other moralities besides herd morality. They have existed in the past and in the present and can again in the future. Now, herd morality denies this and insists that it is the only possible type of morality, and it is supported in this claim by Christianity and democracy. And even this dominance is not enough for some, says Nietzsche. We witness then the anarchists and the socialists and the complete egalitarians who wish to go farther. What we have, he says, is a shared culture of softness, pity, and hatred of suffering, hatred of punishment. But this faith in community is glorifying the herd. It's a sort of self-glorification of the herd man. In the final section of Part 5, Section 203, Nietzsche begins to sketch out his own alternative. He notes that democracy is a continuation of this long decline of European man. Our hope, he says, is in the new philosophers, in spirits that are strong and original enough to invert herd morality, to create a new morality of the will that goes beyond the herd morality's categories of good and evil, hence the title of the book. He calls for a revaluation of values under whose new pressure and hammer a conscience would be steeled, a heart turned to bronze in order to endure the weight of such responsibility. Such new philosophers will be far greater and more terrifying than the best men of today. We might think again here of the Overman. And the hope for such leaders, and the fear that they may not come, or that they may be lost or corrupted or become decadent, this generates great anxiety in Nietzsche. But the alternative to this is the completion of this herd morality conversion of man into just another animal, a kind of dwarf animal. And this provokes an even stronger reaction of nausea in Nietzsche. So with Nietzsche's anxiety and with his nausea, we conclude Book 5. We'll look at Book 6 next. Thanks for watching today. Goodbye.